Can games have punctum? What does virtuality give or take from Barthes' ideas about punctum? There have been of late a genre of games that don't really run on most of the genre expectations for video games, especially first-person games, which are usually violent, fast, and action-based. They're produced by smaller companies. These games slow down. There are no people to shoot, no bad guys to hide from. Instead, there's an emphasis on emotionality, of people, relationships, environment.
I need a serious timeout in the bathroom. Splash water on my face and make sure I don't look like a total loser.
I hate that class, it's so fucking boring.
In these games, there's a being in the worldness that is lost when the clock is ticking and the monsters are closing in. In many of these games, there's an emphasis on tactility. The world is to be explored, and you, through your avatar's hands, can do so, object by object. This will be a growing trend as VR tech and gaming gets popular.
Best.
In analyzing Barthes' Camera Lucida, Michael Haley writes of the tactility of photographs. Thus cradles and conceals the palm, but leaves the fingertips exposed around the edges. These fingers point at Barthes. They begin to appear everywhere in photography, and always they succeed in touching him. He invents a term for this pointing figure, the punctum, and even before he locates it within the photograph, he feels it in the physical presence of the photographer. So, what happens to all this in a virtual world? The hands aren't yours, they don't belong to you, but also they do. Even if you can't feel it or hold it, you can hold it and turn it, point at it, and maybe let it strike you. In comparing photography to cinema, Barthes writes of the blind field, the edge of the screen where life presumably exists. The world outside the screen seems to continue on. The world outside the photograph is gone. But what about the game? Is this world ever real in the first place? If it isn't being rendered, is it there? What about the photograph within the game? All this is to ask, can games have punctum? The punctum, described by Barthes as a subtle beyond, pricking from somewhere beyond what it permits us to see, the thing we add to what we see that is nonetheless already there. An unscripted moment, the right combination of elements coming together, simulated pieces falling in the right ways to make, to call, to pierce from perhaps something more than the sum of its parts? I would say absolutely.
Yeah, they share their water as a colony that can live for hundreds of years, even through fire.
And if so, this is important, not just to show how deeply games can pierce, move, and teach, but we need more games like this, more games that aren't afraid to take their time. Because, to edit one of Barthes' lines, Ultimately, the game is subversive, not when it frightens, repels, or even stigmatizes, but when it is pensive, when it thinks.